You're listening to The Sailor Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right. Thanks to my wonderful daughter for the introduction. My name is Rick Crawford, and I am the host of the Sustainable Angler podcast. I'm also the president of Emerger Strategies and the founder of the Fly Fishing Climate Alliance. So before we get into today's episode, I do have some exciting news. The Sustainable Angler is now officially a 1% for the Planet member. So what that means is we'll donate 1% of our annual sales to environmental nonprofits. So anytime you buy any Sustainable Angler merchandise or any of our paid sponsorships, a minimum of 1% of those sales will go to support environmental nonprofits like Charleston Waterkeeper and the Sustainability Institute and Bonefish and Tarpon Trust and others. So really excited to share that news with y'all. But let's focus on today's episode. So really excited to share this interview with you. I have Chris Crolley, who is the CEO of Coastal Expeditions. They do SUP and kayak tours around the low country in Charleston and Beaufort, South Carolina. And in this episode, we get into the history and background that Chris brings to Coastal Expeditions. But something that I was really interested in, having grown up on a sea island, is learning more about barrier island ecology. We get into some interesting facts, such as when you're standing on a beach in the low country, you're actually standing on top of the Appalachian Mountains, which is really cool. We talk a little fishing, and we also talk about some of the environmental threats that we face here in the low country, most notably sea level rise, climate change. But Chris brings a unique perspective because he looks at it from how it is affecting shorebirds. And he even created a foundation, the Coastal Expedition Foundation, that was founded to create habitat. They've got a great success story with Crab Bank here in Charleston, and we will dive into that and much more on today's episode. Hey, also, be sure to check out our new website. It's thesustainableangler.com to read blog posts, get caught up on previous episodes, and we even have some brand new The Sustainable Angler merchandise made with cotton of the Carolinas. So 100% dirt to shirt made in the Carolinas. Pretty cool. Also, The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is now airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, Ohm Radio, 96.3 FM. The Sustainable Angler podcast is brought to you by Emerger Strategies and A New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging.
We set out with a New Earth Project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
Fishing taught me that everything in nature is interconnected. Just as a fiddler crab, a tailing redfish, and a marsh ecosystem are connected, so are our businesses and our planet. And we have a vision of businesses and the environment thriving together. Imagine a company that not only champions the sport of fishing, but also leads on climate action and conservation efforts. Products and packaging that are friendly to marine life and that degrade harmlessly back into the earth. It's not a dream, it's a strategy, and that's what we do at Emerger Strategies. We guide businesses on their sustainability journey by helping them measure and improve the sustainability performance of their operations, products, and packaging, all while boosting profits. Because when nature thrives, we all thrive. Together, we can make a difference for generations to come. Visit our website at emergerstrategies.com. Let's protect what we love together.
And the full-time, employee. And then Ann retired in 2002, and I became the sole owner. And I am the founder of the Coastal Expeditions Foundation, which is probably the most exciting thing that we have going on, and sort of fruition of my life's work, doing environmental education in the Lowcountry. But I'm a native South Carolinian, born in Camden, South Carolina. I moved to Charleston in 1989 to go to the College of Charleston. Hurricane Hugo hit and changed everything, and I've been working here at Coastal Expeditions doing the sustainability and environmental education for 30-something years now. So just a good old Southern boy trying to make a hustle, really. How's that for an introduction?
I think that's perfect. I think it's very relatable to myself as well. But so for folks who maybe aren't as familiar, what type of services or programs does Coastal Expeditions offer?
Well, we started off with the self-powered exploratory vessels right when expedition-style sea kayaks became available to the common man due to the rotomolded process, and that's what we had, was a small fleet of expedition-style kayaks in the backyard, and we were trying to book. This was like pre-internet, pre-websites, pre-cell phones, and that's how we started. But we quickly picked up the delinquent contract for the Bulls Island Ferry, which is inside Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge. And we've been running the Bulls Island Ferry since 1994, I think, 1993, 94. And so that was a power boat mixed into our mix. And as the clock has ticked and we've learned and grown, we now have a fleet of power boats that we do our environmental platforms to do environmental education from. And we have a few locations where we do the self-powered vessels, including the stand-up paddle boards and recreational kayaks, as well as the expedition-style sea kayaks.
That is super cool. So, Chris, I know that we kind of briefly touched on this, but I will mention a long time ago, probably it would have been 2011, maybe 2012. I was actually a sea kayak guide at Sea Kayak Georgia on Tybee Island. And as Chris and I, just for context, Chris and I crossed paths pretty recently. I don't know, sometime over the last few months, but definitely through, I'm a member of the Sustainability Leadership Initiative, or going through their classes with Furman University and a nonprofit here called Sustain SC. And being from Savannah and spending large portion of my free time out on the water, whether it's out on the beach or boating or kayaking or fishing. Um, Chris took us on a walking tour of a barrier island. I think in this case it was Wadey's Island, right off the right near Myrtle Beach. But anyhow, it would just sort of just kind of blew my mind how much Chris knew, and we were just on a little walking tour. So, what my hope for today, Chris, is that you can sort of educate us on Barrier Island ecology and how unique and special the Low Country is.
Yeah, that's a lot. That was a lot of a lot of thoughts in my mind when you were talking about Sea Kayak Georgia and Tybee. When we first started, the great Dale Williams was part of the jam, and he's the founder of that organization. And we needed training, right? And the American school, the sea kayaking was so new in the early 90s that the American school didn't recognize it. They didn't have a rubric or a lesson plan to teach anybody how to sea kayak. All the American school recognized was whitewater kayaking, right? So when you said kayak back then, everybody thought whitewater. So we hired coaches in from Europe, from the British Canoe Union, the BCU, and it was me and Dale Williams who started Sea Kayak Georgia, and another couple of people that were getting BCU certified star coaching certificates, and we were some of the only BCU certified coaches in the country.
Wow.
And then eventually the American Canoe Association came on, and I remember like Sea Kayak Georgia. It's just such a great memory. But that's how, it wasn't really about the kayaking, although kayaking is such a beautiful sport and it's a lifetime sport, and it's something I feel like I'll do forever. I just have a passion for it, and it's opened so many doors for me. But the reason that kayaking is so good in the Low Country is because it's a platform to get you places that no other vessel can get you.
Mm-hmm.
Those self-powered vessels. And that isn't a new idea. That idea is as old as Homo sapiens in North America. So 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, the years old with dugout canoes and self-powered hunting vessels. It just so happens that the kayaks were invented by indigenous people, Inuits and Eskimos in the north. But that is as old as humans and water are self-powered vessels. And these creeks and bays and sounds of the Low Country, and this string of pearls, this keys of barrier islands that are all up and down the coast of South Carolina, and Georgia. I mean, gosh, Georgia's beautiful too. Of course, there's no real boundary. It's just this part of the East Coast is so well accessed by shallow draft vessels that are able to go with the tide. I do get long-winded, I will say, so I'm going to pause every now and then. Like I could go and go, like you said so much just now in your opening salvo. I could talk about Wadey's and our experience there, and then actually get to the meat of your question, which has to do with barrier islands and ecosystems. But you go for a second.
Well, for me, like when I was a sea kayak guide, that really, and as an angler, that really, particularly for redfish, right, is I can get access to fish that I could not get in a skiff, like regardless how skinny a skiff can get. Like there's just places that you can't get to that you can in a kayak. And so, like with a fly rod, you can fold it up and throw it in your kayak and get super skinny, super shallow. So that was sort of my initial interest in it, right? And then but I kind of forgot I used to have a whole spiel, when I was a sea kayak guide of, what you were telling the people on the tour about. And that to me is so fascinating and so interesting. And that's kind of what I was like, the ecology and, just the uniqueness of these barrier islands is really, I want to get your spin on it, because I got a little taste of it on that walk. But I mean, if we were on a kayak tour cruising the creeks and, we're headed to a barrier island, well, let's learn about that. That's what I'm fascinated with.
That's great. I'd love to talk at some point with you about, I'd like to like share that vibe and that energy and that great sort of dharma set that has to do with fishing and how fishing affects a person and how fishing affects young people and old people alike. And I say that it reminds me of like when you catch your first wave, when you ride your first wave all the way into the beach.
Yep.
And then you're changed. There's like your life can be judged in two different categories from that point, right? What happened prior to catching that wave and everything else, right?
Right.
And fishing is much like that in my experience, where there's, for some people, not for all people, some people can ride it into the beach and be done and walk away, but some people are affected by it. It affects them emotionally and psychologically and spiritually. And fishing to me is very similar, right? If you're a person that's sort of like genomically programmed to receive what it means to connect with a fish in that way, it'll change your life. There's everything that happened prior to until you caught your first fish, and then there's the rest of your life that happened afterwards. And the Barrier Island chain and the near coastal ecosystem has one of the most productive fisheries in the world, because it is one of the most super abundant ecosystems in the world. Like for sheer biomass, like if you were just to take all the living things and put them on a scale, shake the fiddler crabs out of the marsh and pile the blue crabs and stone crabs and oysters and clams and mussels and speckled trout and flounder and spot-tailed bass and shrimp and squid, and just put it all on a scale, the zooplankton and phytoplankton. And the salt marsh estuary has more biomass than any other ecosystem in the world, sometimes outweighed by the rainforest, except for when our water's hot in the summer. And then it's number one, right? And so it's one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth, and it's referred to as the nursery of the sea. So 90-something% of what lives in the ocean derives its life in one way or another. It either gets its start or feeds on something that gets its start in our salt marsh estuary. And simple definition for an estuary is where the river meets the sea, right? Where fresh water flows into salt water, creating that dynamic edge that we refer to as an ecotone, which is where the barrier islands are.
I absolutely love that, because that was something that I do remember talking about, was that we had more biomass than the Amazon here in the Low Country in our salt marshes, which is just unreal, right? But something that you said, also about sort of this spiritual side of fishing. For me, when I am hooked up with a fish, I am fully present in that moment. And so, that's like a goal of a lot of people have, is to be more present, right? And to not be distracted by the millions of thoughts that are constantly running through your head, and just to be focused on one thing, to feel that jolt of energy, that jolt of lightning at the end of your line with a fish. It does have a spiritual component in my experience, and it is also super fun and highly addictive. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. Similar to, and I surf too, and catching, and it's like, yeah, like these things put you, and I think surfing is similar in that way, in that if you were riding a wave, you were fully present in that moment also, and those are being present is increasingly rare with all the technology and just your mind in general, just racing thoughts. So anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. But when we're talking about the Low Country and all this biomass and all that it has to offer, what is it that, aside from that, that sort of makes this particular area of the coast so unique? How is it different than other areas of the coast?
The and I could go on and on. I do want to, like, when we were walking on Wadey's that day, which is just a jewel that's just before North Carolina and the Little River Inlet up at Cherry Grove, especially as you look back at the disaster that is the unchecked sprawl of Myrtle Beach. I had started off, if you recall, I started off that discussion paying homage to the shoulders of the giants that we stand on. And I think that when you look back in the history of interpreters and people that are making nature accessible because they recognize that we live in this abundant paradise, you go back to guys like that people don't know about, like Henry Woodward and John Lawson. Some people know about Mark Catesby. Everybody knows about John James Audubon, right? But the naturalist that was the father of South Carolina interpretation, modern interpretation, is a fellow who's recently passed away that we love, named Rudy Mankey. And Rudy taught us how to teach, and Rudy taught us how to interpret and be good ambassadors of this ecosystem, because we do, like, if you go back in the historic record and you see these naturalists that had come to this part of the world for the first time in, like, recorded history from those that record history, from the Royal Society of London, when Isaac Newton was the president of this Renaissance, this natural Renaissance, and Mark Catesby sent back writings that said, we have discovered paradise. We have found paradise, and this is it. They were talking about the coast of South Carolina, and the reason for that is because of all of the rivers that run into the ocean, right? So all of these rivers that run into the sea that come down from the upstate, or they're blackwater rivers that are born in the Piedmont, create these estuary ecosystems and bring silicates from inland to the coast that at this water level have backed up into these barrier islands and sea islands. The barrier islands that have a relationship with the ocean, and the sea islands behind them, like James Island and Johns Island and Wadmalaw Island, that are formed by rivers and make some of the most productive and fertile grounds in the world. The estuaries and barrier island ecosystems formed by those rivers as the mountains have migrated to the ocean over the millennia. And you think about the Appalachian Mountains, and there's a huge human connection with the upstate. People have been walking out of the Low Country in the hot summer, going to Asheville for 3,000 or 4,000 years. Like what we find on the near coast is the oldest archaeological evidence of the presence of man in this part of the world without digging, and those are mounds and middens of shells. And these natives walk the old footpath. I think they called it the Kiwi Trail, but I think we call it I-26 today. And then look at it; it goes straight to Asheville, right? That's the old walking trail. But the geological significance is far greater and goes back to tectonic plates and continental collisions when the Appalachian Mountains were formed, and they were proud and tall, much taller than they are today, like some of the tallest mountains of their time. But now they're not, right? They're not very tall mountains. It's hard to find 4,000 feet in the near Appalachian chain, and that's because they're ancient. It's because they're so old. And what used to be the top of them is the beach, right? What used to be the top of them has rolled down the rivers over time and been deposited at these nearshore bars that we call barrier islands. So if you sample that sand at the beach and you find the calcium carbonate, there's a lot of calcium carbonate here, but you take that out because that's shells, that's bivalves and univalves. And what you find is feldspar, quartz, mica, mesocyte, all the things that make up the composite rock of granite that used to be the top of some of the tallest mountains on Earth. And so to summit those mountains, you come to sea level with us at the beach, and at this water level, at this time, and it's a story of dynamic edges. It is so fascinating and ultimately entertaining when you move through the estuary, through the myriad of the 297 different species of birds categorized seasonally, past the Atlantic bottlenose dolphins and the diving brown pelicans. You hit the western side, the salt marsh side of the barrier island, and you walk in, and all of a sudden you're in a completely different ecosystem, a different world where otters and minks and raccoons and rabbits and white-tailed deer are thriving, where the birds are no longer pelicans and terns and oyster catchers and skimmers, but they're owls and warblers and finches and jays and thrushes in just a few steps. And if you keep walking through the middle of the island, eventually the eco transitions and changes one more time. The greatest change as you walk out of the maritime forest and into the semi-arid desert-like environment that yields the ocean and the beach. And those South Carolina has some of the longest, most beautiful stretches of beach of anywhere. I mean, I've bought plane tickets to go places that aren't as good as here, you know?
I mean, just everything you just like, I just love this. Like, cause I mean, so I grew up on a sea island, Whitmarsh Island, right, which is on the way out to Tybee Island. And so like just all of this, and like I didn't know that, I guess when colonists had first discovered this area, that we have found paradise, and I mean, just think about what the just the vastness of the wildlife and the fish and the oyster. I mean, it had to have been crazy. I mean, to witness that, going, this is untouched. This is I have more than I need to meet my basic needs here.
Yeah, like the abundance and to be unlocking the world too, to be discovering the world. I mean, Carlos Linnaeus was having to invent the scientific nomenclature, the genus and species, for the Swede Linnaeus, because we were discovering so much all at once that we couldn't keep track of it all with common names, So these naturalists, these early world naturalists that were being sent here by the Royal Society of London, were discovering things that had never been seen before. Like, imagine you're the guy, and you're over here to discover new things, and you've got your benefactors that are paying you to be here. I mean, you risked your life to get here, right? Just that months-long crossing over the Atlantic, and you're around savages, reported savages that are not, quote, civilized, and you're making your way through the undeveloped Low Country, and imagine seeing a ruby-throated hummingbird for the very first time, right? Like, you're the first one to see it. You haven't had any experience with it. All of the European birds are coming north and south from Africa. They've got honey creepers, not hummingbirds. But imagine if you're the guy that gets to report to Isaac Newton, the Isaac Newton that you're thinking of, that, oh my God, look at this new animal that's new to taxonomy. It must have been an amazing time to be alive, and it still is. I mean, paradise still exists here, and that's why we do environmental education. That's why we do this. That's why we do this work, this important work that we do. It's like you had said, the people spend a lot of time and go to classes and practice, and they pray and they meditate, and they're trying to develop a mantra that gets them into the presence, into the now, into the event of mindfulness. And and I think that one of the great teachers of that are being lost in nature, being present for something happening for you outside. And it's amazing, sort of the wisdom of a fish, right?
Yeah.
Like a fish is going to demonstrate what mindfulness means. Like it is. It reminds me of a quote. There's a fellow named Yvon Chouinard, and he was a sort of a short fellow that was a rock climber, and he pounded out the early rock climbing equipment on the tailgate of his truck to make a living. And he created climbing gear for a long time until people started copying the clothes he was wearing, and he eventually founded a company called Patagonia.
Yep.
And Yvon Chouinard is a great mountain climber, adventurer, and a great fly fisherman. And when he talks about being out in nature and doing the fly fishing, he goes into detail about all the things it takes to get ready to do it, and the right gauge of line and the right day, and being aware of what's going on in the ecosystem and the water temperature and the insects and all of the rhythms. And then he explains that if you're lucky and you get everything just right, eventually a fish might catch you.
Love
which
that.
I thought was a great spin. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, Mr. Chouinard has certainly inspired me in a number of ways. Some of the books I've read, if anyone hasn't checked out some of his stuff, I would encourage you to do so if you're into sustainability and just using nature to inspire and protect what you love. It's just super inspiring. So we're talking about the Low Country being a paradise, right? In this area, what is threatening our paradise here with barrier islands, with sea islands, with just this general area, in your opinion?
Yeah, paradise, threatening of paradise. I've often, like, when you get into the sort of overwhelming aspects of man behaving badly on Earth and doing things that are completely ignorant of the sustainability of an ecosystem, it's sort of like easy to get cynical and jaded. And I mean, a long time ago, we came to the idea that Earth will be a beautiful place long after we've made it unsustainable for human life.
Right.
So what's threatening to our paradise isn't new to paradise; it's new to us. The biggest thing is the rising water levels. So the ocean levels are rising. That is fact. That's science.
Yep.
And if you don't believe it, you fit into a group of folks that are being termed science intolerant. So climate change is happening, as you know, along with the rising water levels, and these are all facts. And the biggest problem that we're seeing right now, and this is important because as a lover of nature, and a conscious person, you pay attention to how we're affecting sustainable ecosystems, and some of the most brilliant avian species on this planet are the seabirds and shorebirds. And seabirds and shorebirds rely on specific ecosystems to rest and to feed and to nest, right? So you can imagine with these rising water levels that their nesting areas and their feeding and resting areas are being encroached upon by the water, which is just fine with them because they've seen it before. They just go to the next available high ground. The problem now is that the next available high ground is where we are, right? It's where the school is. It's where the church is built. It's where the grocery store is. It's where the resort now resides. So there's nowhere for the birds to go to rest, feed, or nest. Like, for instance, this critical species called the least tern. It's the smallest of all the tern family, and they're just brilliant little birds. They nest on the roof of buildings now, right? They don't have somewhere to go that in South Carolina and Florida, I know of too. Their colonies are nesting on the roof, and it's a condition called coastal squeeze. And we are supplanting the ecosystem where the where the birds would normally move to in this sort of this continued event of Earth, and the water levels rising and falling, like the fall line, for example, is in Colombia, right? And that's where the ocean level used to be. The sand hills, the rolling hills of Santee, those were the sand dunes when the ocean was 100 miles further inland. And 250 million years ago, during the Great Ice Age, the Great One, the ocean was 60 miles further out. So it's not news to Earth that the ocean levels rise and fall. It's news to us. It's news to, apparently, it's news to people.
Right.
So some of the great work that's being done, and the Coastal Expeditions Foundation is interested in this, and it may be what I'm doing for the rest of my life, is trying to figure out ways to recreate bird nesting habitat until we can figure out what to do about it, because we're watching species of birds dwindle. They're not procreating in the kind of numbers that mean their species is sustainable. And when that happens, when we see birds fail to procreate successfully, we realize that we're watching a process, and the process is called extinction, right?
I don't mean to
So
laugh,
with that,
but it's just wow.
Yeah, I'm no scientist. I'm a storyteller at best. I'm a storyteller. I'm not a scientist, but I am pretty sure that if a species of any animal doesn't procreate successfully at a certain frequency, that eventually they go extinct. Yeah. And we'll take a bird like the black skimmer, for example. The black skimmer, Rheinchops niger, is one of the most brilliant seabirds on Earth. It's specific in its lower mandible that is longer than its upper mandible. The only bird in the world with a longer lower mandible than upper mandible. It's a crepuscular animal that thrives at dawn and dusk with vertical pupils. It's black on the top and white with some orange accent, and it is brilliant. When they feed on the glassy waters of the dawn and dusk, there's nothing more graceful in nature than a black skimmer, a pair of them, a squadron of black skimmers feeding together in the way they do. And if you look at the historic record, and you can see where naturalists like John James Audubon's friend Bachman reported 20,000 skimmers nesting in Cape Romaine. And this past year, more skimmers nested in one spot in South Carolina than I believe anybody alive has ever seen. And it was 563 nests, 563 pairs, right?
Not a good trend.
Oh yeah, and it's I don't know what it takes to become critically endangered, but I'd say that's a precipitous fall. The good stuff, the good news is where those skimmers nested, right? So there are bird nesting islands on the coast of South Carolina, but there are only 5 of them. There's Marsh Island in Cape Romaine. There's DeVoe Bank in the mouth of the North Edisto River or South Edisto River. There's Bird Key Stono, where the Stono River and the Kiowa River meet. And then there's Tompkins Islands just down at the Savannah River right before our neighbors in Georgia. The one that's received sort of the most attention in our efforts is the one that's in Charleston Harbor, kind of on the Mount Pleasant side, and it's called Crab Bank Island. Mm-hmm. And Crab Bank Island was home to thousands of nesting birds of many different kinds, a few different kinds of terns and oyster catchers and lots of pelicans and black skimmers too were nesting out there, and it washed away over time due to rising water levels and boat wake. And then when the storm surge of the final hurricane washed the eggs away one nesting season, we just grieved for the loss of it. Luckily, the harbor was being deepened in the post-45 deepening project, and the Coastal Expeditions Foundation spearheaded the effort of renourishing with great partners. But we renourished Crab Bank Island, and it is now 34 acres at at high tide and 9 foot above the mean high or high water. And that's where the skimmers and least terns are nesting now, is on that recreated island called Crab Bank Island. And it is a giant success story. And that is what needs to happen with our other bird nesting islands. We need to, or we need to create habitat with beneficial dredge spoil for birds to nest, because where they want to go is where we are. So we have to create something for them to go to.
Wow, that's and so the Coastal Expeditions Foundation is how do y'all find projects like this? Like how does it all happen? How can people support the foundation? How to because to me it's like, it's like habitat obviously is critical for all animals, right? And we have developed, or some, I'm sure we'll say overdeveloped this, and it's increasingly being developed, this whole area, and in the low country, and that's from south of Savannah to Georgetown or even Myrtle Beach, and there's just increasingly less land available, because it's a desirable place to live. And so so you have to create the habitat, it sounds like, and it's similar with I love to participate in the oyster shell restoration and doing those types of things, because it has so many benefits. But I have not thought before about, these creatures have nowhere else to go. So if we don't create the habitat that they need, then they're well on their way to not being around anymore. So that's long-winded. How do we do more of this, and how do we support the foundation and all that?
Let's see. So seabirds and shorebirds and all of the habitat they need, the concept of just knowing about it, like there's so many people that don't know about it. And like with the Coastal Expeditions Foundation, and I'm not going to try to like turn this discussion into a fundraising discussion. I'm not great at raising funds. I'm great at, whatever, walking in the woods and telling stories, but I'm better at it than I was. Because engineers,
I'll say it for you.
Yeah. The engineers have to get paid, and there is a cost of doing this sort of business, but it's a very high yield, right? It's a very high yield. I asked a group with Sustain SC. I was doing a talk down in Beaufort. We got to talk about what we have going on in Beaufort. It's just amazing, the inroads into that community, that we've been so well accepted, and we're doing such good work with plans of more. But I asked them, this group of professionals I was talking to, I said, if all the birds on Earth disappeared tomorrow, how long do you think it would take you to know it? Right? At what point do you go, I haven't seen a bird today. Come to think of it, I didn't see one yesterday either. Where are all the birds? Right? And everybody kind of was like taken aback by that, and they kind of thought about it for a little bit, and it was kind of like a lot of head shaking and nodding. And I picked on the lawyer in the back who was from Atlanta, and I said, and you, sir, what if it was pelicans? Right? Like, he comes to the coast every other year, the pelicans could go away. Or if you live in Minnesota, or if you live in Kansas, you may have never seen a black skimmer before, right? You don't know. But there are, this is like, you ask, how do you know about the work and that sort of thing? And I will say, historically, if I look back in time, I look at brown pelicans, and I see that in the history of brown pelicans, the Pelecanus occidentalis, our bird, that they nearly went extinct in the late 60s and early 70s due to a poison that was very persistent. It was this wonderfully effective pesticide called DDT. And the best thing about it was so persistent that it lasted apparently forever, right? Like it never goes away. Like right now, you and I would test positive, or you and I and everybody listening would test positive for traces of DDT in our bodies. That's how persistent it is. The place where they used to make it in California is like a Project Superfund site. You can't go on it. It's so poisonous. But it was getting into the non-point source pollution, getting into the water, getting into the plants of the water, getting to the fish that ate the plants in the water, and eventually getting into the birds. And the birds like pelicans, bald eagles, peregrine falcons were all in danger of becoming extinct because they were suffering from the soft egg syndrome that made their egg shells too soft to remain viable in their nest. They were crushing their own eggs, and pelican populations crashed, and so did bald eagle populations, and so did peregrine falcon populations, and other fish-eating birds, and birds that eat other birds that eat fish. But our community, people that understand what it means to be mindful, saw it happening and went to our government. We went to the Washington, D.C. and lobbied Congress. And there was a woman named Rachel Carson who wrote a book called The Silent Spring, right? Some people remember The Silent Spring, but Rachel addressed the Appropriations Committee of Congress and told the story, right? And unfortunately, our poet, Rachel Carson, was not well, and she didn't live to see that DDT got banned in our country, right? And that an agency was created to keep track of things like this. They call it the Environmental Protection Agency, due to the efforts of us, due to our efforts as a tribe of people that if birds were to disappear, we would notice that moment, right? We would notice that day that there was something wrong, because there are people that count birds and people that know things about birds, and they feel a spiritual connection with them. And that is the answer to how to get this problem solved, is the reincarnation of that same energy that saved pelicans and bald eagles and peregrine falcons back in the late 60s and early 70s. It's that time again. It takes a major movement from our people, from our tribe, to move into this sustainable culture that means protecting seabirds and shorebirds in this case, but all birds really. There's these animals collect us planetarily. They leave southern South America and stop right here, nonstop flight, the red knots, and they move on up to Hudson Bay and connect us with people in the Arctic regions. They're like angels that connect our populations worldwide, and we're watching them go extinct. And here's the issue. I'm gonna rant here for a moment, but the issue is that where I see urgency and available capital and available permits and governments moving hard to save a thing is when there's a realtor's pro forma involved, when there's property of rich people involved or rich conglomerates involved. Heavy dirt moving equipment shows up the next day. Special permits are issued for bulkheads. Sand is trucked in. Sand is dredged up. The beach is renourished. And there's some of these, in front of these coastal resorts, there's some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen, right? Because it's all tied to a realtor's pro forma. It's all tied to a multi-billion-dollar investment in vacation rentals, right? And golf courses. And I don't know, snow cones and liquor drinks, but the, umbrella rental, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. People need to visit the coast. Some of my best memories are of growing up, vacationing at Litchfield, when it was still no air conditioning. It was all about a slamming stream door and shad roe for breakfast. But the problem is that no one's feeling the urgency of the same sort of coastal real estate being encroached and disappearing, but it's not connected to a pro forma. It's not connected to a conglomerate or to a realtor or to whoever you are that owns a front beach mansion on the Isle of Palms, South Carolina. It's like the kind of bankruptcy we're talking about for seabirds and shorebirds is called extinction, right? And nobody gives a damn. Nobody seems to care. And it's time that if we all stood up together and jumped on the count of 3, we'd rock the low country. And that's what it's going to take, is a movement. It's going to take some people that care doing something about it and requiring action to be taken. And that's my rant. That's when I got on a roll there.
Well, it works. You got me fired up, and it also has me thinking about, what I think some people may miss is that, when you're talking about saving species or populations and stuff, like it's vastly interconnected. So it's like, I can't make the connection, but surely there's a connection between fish and birds. If there's a healthy bird population, there's a healthier fish population. Somehow, I don't know how to make that connection. But my point is that it's not just think of all of the other animals and plants that benefit just from focusing on the bird, right? And their habitat. It has ripple effects, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, it comes down to that when we talk about it, and it seems to be that it seems to be I guess the idea of, well, how much is a pelican worth? Like at some point I've seen not the engineering, but the statisticians looking at the local economy and trying to figure out the value of a healthy bird population. And it's amazing if you look at it, how healthy bird populations and being an attraction for people to come and see the things, to come and see the dolphins and the pelicans and the skimmers and all the things that you see at the beach and when you visit the coast. I mean, it affects the bottom line, the GDP, right, of the community, and it's all interconnected. It is all interconnected. I see it from an artistic standpoint, for example. Like one of the what's the good one that kind of gets me is, like, if you have to ask why save pelicans or why save black skimmers or why save least terns or Wilson's plovers or red knots, then you're not for me. It's like, if you have to ask, you'll never know. If you have to ask, you'll never know. Because, like, for instance, the oldest evidence of a brown pelican being around is about 36 million years ago, right?
Huh.
Like hominids, not even Homo sapiens, just hominids, like people, like creatures that would have looked like our basic body plan. We're only about 6 million years, right? So as a cultivar piece of, if we were art, for example, if we were an art that was produced by a process called evolution, then that Pelecanus occidentalis art, this 36 million year old process to come up with what we call a pelican, and it's extinct and it's gone because we wanted to make more room for more condominiums where they nest, right? On Captain Sam's Spit, right? We wanted to make more rooms for more real estate so more people that aren't from here can make more money and demonstrate zero urgency, care, thought, or legislative responsibility to the birds, to the local habitat, to the indigenous inhabitants, the birds,
Right.
It is. Yeah, it is. So this is the work we're doing. This is the work the Coastal Expeditions Foundation is involved with. We do environmental education because we feel like the answer to the most pressing questions of our time are answered through the lens of education. If they knew better, they'd do better. We're working with people, educating humans of all age groups and all demographics. We are working with habitat, creating islands and pushing to create islands like the huge success story that is Crab Bank. And we're working with actual populations of animals like the loggerhead sea turtles in Cape Romaine and the black skimmers that are nesting on the landscape of Crab Bank. So if it's something you're interested in, and this is something that fires you up, and it is something that if you're blessed to have a philanthropic action plan, and this sounds like something that fits your model, the Coastal Expeditions Foundation is easy to find. You just find it like you find everything these days. You Google it, right?
Well, I think I don't know. I think that all of this, like, as an angler, it's important to protect all coastal species because that there's an interconnection between them. Like inherently, that you have to know that you can't wipe out one species and it not affect another. And so we see that with conservation related to fisheries and things. And it's like they've done all the studies and done the economic impact of redfish or tarpon and they've done all this, and that's all well and good, but just like to your point, like if you have to ask why, I think it's important that you do this. Then like, why? Well, I guess that y'all are helping to educate those who may be asking why. But I don't know, Chris. I really just enjoy your passion and your storytelling and being born and raised in the Low Country. On a sea island on the way to the beach in Savannah. It's just, I love the history. It's so fascinating. I mean, you're standing on the top of the Appalachian Mountains on our beaches. That in and of itself is just, I don't know, maybe that's not interesting to some people. That's super interesting and just love it. So I do want. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to just say, that is something that when that piece of the story, when that sort of punchline of the story entered my lexicon, my vocabulary for the first time, I was just like, whoa, that's a real mind blowing idea that you're summiting some of the tallest mountains that have ever existed on Earth at sea level, at sea level. It's amazing. The if you have to ask, you can't afford it sort of idea, where it's like, if you have to ask, you'll never know, is also interesting to me. Like, I wonder if it is paradise, if it is paradise, how much can you subtract from it and it still be paradise, right? Like if it is an oatmeal cream pie, how much cream can you subtract and still call it an oatmeal cream pie, like how, and it still be the thing, and it's like our wonderful counselor and wise naturalist, John Muir, said, to Theodore Roosevelt, the 20th century, I tried to touch one thing in the universe. I tried to touch just one isolated thing, but I couldn't, because I found that it was integrally connected to everything in the universe, and you start subtracting from paradise and it ain't paradise, you start subtracting from a great place to raise your kids and it's not a great place to raise your kids. You start subtracting from a wonderful integrated community with service and goods for everyone, and it ceases to be a wonderful, great community. And we're giving it all up so fleetingly like we did during Reconstruction, as if it's valueless. And we're letting folks come in here from off and have their way with it somewhere else. And meanwhile, we're watching paradise slip through our hands like sand on the beach, like the top of the ancient mountains. It's there's something we could do about it. And I do believe if we knew better, we'd do better. And that's why education is key to the solution, because I do believe if people knew better, I've got to believe that a more educated electorate would force better decisions.
Well, I think that you're exactly right, and I think that hopefully through this podcast we'll extend some of your knowledge and educate some anglers about I don't think it would take much convincing for most anglers, but just learning a little bit more about this area and or wherever you live, and understanding what's happening, and taking action once you have that knowledge, I think is our responsibility to protect what we all love. And so yeah, I do, Chris, want to ask you, because I don't think, I got to look into it, or you tell me, but my daughter is 5. I don't think she's quite old enough, but I do want to let folks know about y'all's kids fishing camp for folks that live here in the Charleston area.
Yeah, thank you. The Coastal Expeditions is the school of. It's the school of coastal expeditions, and some of the most important work and what makes us feel the best has to do with interacting with the young people, interacting through our summer camps and our after school camps, and our if you're a parent with a school age kid, CCSD takes a lot of half days, and a lot of days off. And when they do, the naturalists and educators at Coastal Expeditions are ready to help you with your kids. And we're expanding that program. There's some wonderful people here that are picking up that mission and advancing it. And it's all about education. It's simple Coastal Expeditions. If you want to find out more about it, there is a like an intro to fishing camp for kids that we do, where we go out and learn the different species of fish, and we catch, all the drum species that you would think, the whiting and the spot and the croaker and the sharks when the water's warm. And it's just so fun for the kids, and they get so much out of it. And that happens, at some frequency. You have to look it up, but it's all about education, and it's all about creating a connection with the natural world. And we're all genomically programmed to really get off on that. What is it? Probably physiologically, it's some kind of dopamine release when you make contact with Earth. And one of the things I've been saying lately is, like, Coastal Expeditions, we've been introducing Earthlings to Earth for over 30 years. It's a simple message. The message is welcome to Earth. The message is like, put it down. There's something bigger out there, and the educational. Yeah. And Rick, if you this is true, that what I'm doing, you're doing through this effort with your Sustainable Angler podcast is you're doing education, is what you're doing, and that's what I'm doing. And that's, I believe, the most important work that is to be done. There's, the environmental movement, there's, you got to do land conservation. We've got amazing land conservation group, the Low Country Land Trust and the Open Space Institute, the Nature Conservancy, and on and on. They're wonderful. But that's a stool. That's one of the 3 legs on the stool of this environmental movement. The other is policy and advocacy, right? Like, you got to have lobby. You got to have somebody getting it done. Like the Coastal Conservation League, there's a good bit of lobby happening through the Audubon Society and other similar organizations. I don't do either one of those things. I don't hold easements on tracts of land. I don't go to Washington. I have, but I don't go to Washington and lobby on behalf of the Coastal Expeditions Foundation. It's not how we do. What we do is mission specific education, and our mission is education, like yours is. And what we do is we also support the other two legs of the stool because they think their thing is the most important thing, right? And they're not wrong. That's their dharma, you know? So if environmental education isn't your thing, I get that. But if it is your thing, you know, Earthling, the Coastal Expeditions Foundation is doing the work. And every morning when I get up, I recommit to doing the work. And every night when I go to bed, I look forward to getting a good night's sleep so I can get up in the morning and keep doing the work. And that's all we know how to do. It's just how we do.
Well, I can't think of a more inspiring and positive way to probably wrap this episode, is to commit to doing the work and get yourself educated. And in the process, you will probably become inspired. And once you're inspired, then you're probably going to be ready to take action. So Chris, I've thoroughly have enjoyed this conversation. And I appreciate everything that Coastal Expeditions does and is doing to educate folks about where we live here in the Low Country in the Charleston and Beaufort area. Also, the Coastal Expeditions Foundation. I am looking forward to helping do what I can to support your organization and foundation. And for anyone listening who wants to jump in right now, and is it Coastal Expeditions, coastalexpeditions.com and Coastal Expedition?
I think I did it earlier today because I had to include it as a link to a donor, but it's just, if you just Google Coastal Expeditions Foundation, it'll take you to a spot where there's a donate now button, and you can look at what we're doing. More importantly, look at what we're doing and see if it fits your model. And the Coastal Foundation is a business structure. You know, it's a 501c3. So of course the benefits of tax deduction and that sort of thing. But, you know, we've always been Coastal Expeditions philanthropic since our founding, and just part of our move over the next 3 to 5 years as we make the transition, we're going to, Coastal Expeditions will just be the Coastal Expeditions Foundation. You know, the S-Corp business structure, as we take cues from giants in our field like Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia. We're happy to sideline the S-Corp and let it function as an endowment that feeds the foundation and just be foundation forward in all that we do. And we're in that process. We're in that process right now. So thank you for including us, Rick. Thank you so much for including us. We're honored to be part of your influence and part of your orbit. And I know I'll see you on the water, my friend.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it. And thanks so much. All right. Right. So thanks to Chris and Coastal Expeditions and the Coastal Expeditions Foundation for all they're doing to protect what we love here in the Low Country. Also, thank you for listening. I really appreciate your support. One absolutely free way that you can support the show is by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps to grow our audience. So hopefully we can continue to educate and inspire even more anglers to protect the planet. Thanks, and we'll see you next month.